My family excluded me from the reunion because I'm freelance. When I announced my engagement, they ignored it. But now they're begging to come to my wedding, and my revenge left them broken. I'm 29 years old. I'm a freelance graphic designer, and what happened a few months ago with my family still has me processing everything, honestly. I mean, I always knew my parents and my siblings didn't really understand what I do, but I never thought they'd go so far as to just erase me from a family reunion like I didn't exist. I guess I should start from the beginning. So, this makes sense, because the thing is, I was always like the weird one in the family, you know? While my brother Bradley was studying marketing and my sister Laura was getting into engineering, I was at design school thinking about typography and color palettes, and my parents basically acted like I was wasting my life. We grew up in a relatively small town where everyone knows everyone, and the idea of success is basically getting a corporate job, getting married at 25, and having kids before 30. Bradley followed the manual to a T, married his college girlfriend, got a position at a big marketing company, has 2 kids and a house in the suburbs. Laura, too. She got married like 3 years ago to an engineer she met at work. They already have a little girl and live in one of those gated communities with a pool and everything. And then there's me, working from my one-bedroom apartment, doing designs for clients from all over the world, dating Nathan for 5 years without immediate plans for a wedding or kids at that time, and basically living a life that makes no sense to my family. The relationship with them has always been kind of tense since I decided to go the freelance route like 6 years ago. My mom, Elizabeth, constantly asked me when I was going to get a real job, and my dad just didn't understand how I could make a living doing what he called little drawings on the computer. Family gatherings were always awkward because Bradley and Laura would talk about their promotions and their corporate projects, and when it was my turn to talk about my work, I'd see everyone's eyes glaze over, with boredom or, worse, with concern. Like I was about to admit I was bankrupt or something. But I was doing well, like better than a lot of my friends with office jobs. And I was happy with my life. So I tried not to let their comments affect me too much. All this to say that when I found out they had excluded me from the family reunion, I shouldn't have been so surprised, but it still hurt like you have no idea. It was like 4 months ago. I was checking Instagram one random afternoon while having coffee in my apartment, and suddenly I see a story from Laura where she's in my parents' backyard with the whole family. You know, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, everyone. And there I was, sitting in my living room with no idea this was happening. I just froze, staring at the screen, thinking maybe I had misunderstood something, that maybe they had invited me and I had forgotten or confused the date. But I checked all my messages and there was nothing. Literally nothing. I called my mom immediately, and when she answered, I could hear the laughter and background noise from the reunion, which honestly made everything worse. I asked her why they hadn't told me about the reunion, and she got all nervous, with that voice she uses when she knows she did something wrong but doesn't want to admit it. She told me they thought I wouldn't want to come because I was always so busy with my freelance work and my clients that they didn't want to bother me, that they assumed I'd prefer to stay home working. And I was just like, seriously? It didn't occur to you to just ask me? I told her that made no sense, that I had always gone to family reunions before, and she just mumbled something about how, well, everyone was already there and we'd see each other soon anyway. I hung up feeling completely betrayed, honestly. Nathan came home like an hour later and found me kind of crying on the couch, and when I told him what happened, he got furious, like angrier than I was. He told me that was unacceptable, that my family had basically erased me on purpose, and that I shouldn't let them get away with it. We talked for hours about what to do, whether I should confront them or just let it go. And in the end, I decided on something that was maybe a little petty, but felt perfect at the time. I was going to show up at the reunion anyway. The next day, I baked some homemade cookies, got dressed up nice, and drove to my parents' house like nothing. When I knocked on the door, my mom's face was priceless, like pure surprise mixed with panic. Everyone went quiet when I walked into the backyard with my plate of cookies, and the atmosphere got super awkward immediately. My uncle Roberto tried to break the ice by asking me how I was, but you could tell nobody knew what to say. Bradley barely greeted me with a head nod, and Laura gave me a fake half-hug, one of those you give when you feel like you have to but don't want to. I sat with my younger cousins who have always been cooler, with me, especially my cousin Ava, who's 26 and understands my lifestyle more because she also works in creative stuff. Ava whispered to me that she thought it was terrible. They hadn't invited me and that she had asked about me, but was told I was busy. For the next 2 hours, I tried to act normal, but it was obvious my presence had ruined the vibe for some people, especially Bradley and Laura, who gave me weird looks every time I spoke. And then what happened made everything explode. Laura stood up in the middle of the backyard, clinked her glass with a fork to get everyone's attention, and announced she was pregnant again, with her second child. Everyone went crazy, like screaming, applause, hugs, my mom crying with happiness, my dad pulling out an expensive bottle of champagne he'd been saving. It was a really nice moment for her. I'm not going to deny it. But what happened next was what really showed me where I stood in this family. After all of Laura's excitement calmed down a bit, I took advantage of the moment because I thought, well, if we're going to share important news, this is my opportunity. I stood up and said I also had an announcement, that Nathan had proposed to me 2 weeks ago and we were engaged. I showed the ring, which isn't super flashy, but is beautiful, and meant a lot to us because Nathan designed it specifically for me. And you know what happened? Silence. Complete silence. Like the only sound was the wind moving the tree leaves. My mom said something like, "Oh, that's nice, Mija. Congratulations," but in a tone you'd use to tell someone they won a $5 raffle, not to announce an engagement. Bradley was the first to open his mouth to say something more substantial, and what he said was, "Seriously, Samantha? You had to do this now? Couldn't you let Laura have her moment?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" I tried to explain that I was just sharing my news like she did, that I thought it was an appropriate time to do it since we were all together. But Laura jumped in and said it was typical of me to make everything about myself, that I always had to get attention, that I couldn't stand not being the center of everything. I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't believe it. I told her that I wasn't even going to be there if it weren't for finding out through Instagram about this reunion I wasn't invited to, and that if anyone was making things about themselves, it was them who basically decided to have a family reunion without me. My dad stepped in there telling me not to be dramatic, that I was already there and should be grateful instead of causing problems. And that's when something in me just broke, you know? Like all the accumulated frustration of years of feeling less than, of feeling like my life and my decisions didn't matter to them, just exploded. I told them everything. Absolutely everything. I told them I was sick of being treated like my career wasn't valid just because I didn't work in an office, that I made more money than a lot of their friends with their corporate jobs, that I was happy with my life, and didn't need their approval. I told them that the fact they had excluded me from this reunion said everything I needed to know about how they really saw me, that it was obvious they didn't consider me an important part of the family, and that if that's what they thought, then fine, they could keep having their reunions without me from now on. Bradley stood up and yelled at me that I was being ridiculous, that I was the one who had always been different and difficult, that if I felt excluded, it was because I had isolated myself with my weird life choices. Laura nodded with everything he said and added that Nathan probably wasn't even good for me, that we'd been together 5 years without real future plans until now, and that he didn't even have a stable job either because he's a freelance photographer too. My parents said nothing to defend me. They just stood there staring at the floor, and that maybe hurt more than anything Bradley or Laura had said. I grabbed my stuff, threw the cookies I'd brought in the kitchen trash because I didn't want them to eat them anymore, and left. Ava ran out after me and hugged me at the entrance, telling me she was on my side and what they had done was wrong. I thanked her and drove to my apartment, with my hands shaking and tears running down my face. Nathan was waiting for me there, hugged me as soon as I walked in, and I cried for I don't know how long while he just held me and told me everything was going to be okay. The next few days were total silence from my family. Not a message, not a call, nothing. It was like I had been the one who did something terrible when they were the ones who excluded me first, and then attacked me when I tried to stand up for myself. My grandparents sent me a message asking if I was okay, but even they said maybe I had reacted too strongly. That family is important, and I should apologize. I didn't respond because honestly, I had nothing to apologize for. 2 weeks after all that drama, Nathan and I decided to throw a small engagement party at our apartment. We invited our closest friends, some cool cousins like Ava, and basically all the people who really supported us. I didn't invite my parents or Bradley or Laura, and I didn't hide it either, like I put photos on social media and everything. It was an amazing night, full of people who were genuinely happy for us, who celebrated our love and our life choices without judging us. Ava brought like 6 of our younger cousins, and we all had an incredible time. The next day, I got a furious call from my mom. She asked me how I dared to have an engagement party without inviting them, that it was a horrible disrespect, that they were my parents and deserved to be there. I told her exactly what she had told me, that I thought they wouldn't want to come because they were probably busy, that I assumed they wouldn't care because clearly my engagement hadn't excited them at all when I announced it. She was quiet for a second and then started screaming that I was being cruel and vindictive, that I was destroying the family by being selfish. I told her no, that they had started this by excluding me from the reunion, by belittling my announcement, by attacking me when I confronted their behavior. I told her I was only doing what they had taught me, that if someone doesn't fit into your idea of family, you simply don't include them. She hung up the phone without saying anything else, and a few minutes later my phone exploded with messages from the family group chat. Bradley wrote a long message saying I was toxic, that I had always been problematic, that I was dividing the family, and all of this was my fault for being so sensitive and dramatic. Laura added that I needed to grow up and stop acting like a teenager, that real family forgives and moves on. Several aunts and uncles jumped in too, some defending me and others attacking me, and the chat became total chaos. My cousin Ava defended my position and explained that I had been unfairly excluded and had a right to be upset, but she was basically silenced by the others who said she was too young to understand family dynamics. In the middle of all that chat drama, I took screenshots of all the messages where they attacked me and where it was clear they admitted having excluded me from the reunion on purpose. I compiled them all into one long message, where I basically exposed all their hypocrisy, how they had excluded me, how they had minimized my engagement, how they had attacked me when I confronted them, and how now they were playing the victims because I did exactly the same thing they did. I told them I didn't want to talk to any of them again until they could acknowledge what they had done and genuinely apologize, and after sending that message, I blocked all of them except Ava and my grandparents. Nathan and I continued planning our wedding, and from the beginning we made it clear that neither my parents nor my siblings were invited. At first I felt bad about it, like the lifelong guilt that family is the most important thing and you should forgive and forget. But Nathan constantly reminded me that I hadn't done anything wrong, that they had been the ones who hurt me first, and that I deserved to be surrounded only by people who loved and respected me on my special day. My mom found out from someone else that we were planning a wedding and sent me a long text message because I had blocked her number but she used my grandmother's phone. The message was basically a guilt trip attempt, saying I was breaking her heart, that every mother dreams of being at her daughter's wedding. How could I be so cruel? That she had raised me and sacrificed so much for me. She didn't mention once the horrible things they had said to me at the family reunion, or the fact that they excluded me first, or that they basically invalidated my engagement. She only focused on how I was hurting her. I didn't respond. What was I going to say? If after everything that happened she still couldn't understand why I was upset, then there was nothing I could say that would make her understand. I blocked my grandmother's number too, which hurt because my grandparents hadn't really done anything wrong, but I needed the space and peace of mind. Like a month and a half ago was the wedding, and it was perfect. Honestly perfect. All my friends were there, the cousins who supported me, including Ava, who was one of my bridesmaids, former colleagues, some clients I have good relationships with, and basically pure people who love Nathan and me for who we are. There was no drama, no passive-aggressive comments about our careers or our lifestyle, just love and celebration. Nathan looked gorgeous, obviously. I felt beautiful, and when they told us we could kiss, that was like the best moment of my life without exaggeration. I found out, later from Ava, that my mom cried all day on my wedding day, that my dad was in a bad mood all week, and that Bradley and Laura were posting things on social media about the importance of family, clearly directed at me. Ava sent me screenshots, but I asked her not to tell me anything else because I didn't want any of that to ruin my happiness. She understood, and since then she's been like a bridge between me and the rest of the family, but she only tells me things if I specifically ask. The thing is, I don't regret anything. You know? At first I felt guilty. Like I thought maybe I had been too harsh, that maybe I should have been the bigger person and forgiven them anyway. But over time, I realized that what I did was stand up for myself. All my life I had let them make me feel less than. I make me feel like my life choices weren't valid because I wasn't following the traditional path they wanted for me. And when I finally had the courage to say enough, to set boundaries and demand respect, they painted me as the bad guy. Nathan and I are incredibly happy. Our freelance businesses are doing better than ever. We're planning to move to a bigger apartment next year, and maybe in a couple of years we'll think about having kids, maybe not. We still don't know, and it's okay not to know. The difference now is that I'm surrounded only by people who support our decisions without judging us, who understand that success isn't measured only by having a 9-to-5 job and a house in the suburbs. Sometimes I think about my mom and wonder if she'll ever realize that she basically chose her pride over her relationship with me. I think about Bradley and Laura and wonder if their perfect lives really make them happy, or if they're just following a script because it's what they're supposed to do. But then I realize those are no longer my questions to answer. Those are their lives and their decisions, just like my life and my decisions are mine. I guess at the end of the day, I learned that family isn't always the people you share blood with. Sometimes it's the people you choose to have by your side, the people who see you and value you for who you really are. And if that makes me selfish or cruel in the eyes of my biological family, then so be it. I'm at peace with my decisions, and that's all that really matters.